This episode is brought to you by my Fertility Friday group programs. Make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program to find out more information about my January 2017 groups and also how to apply. Again, that's fertilityfriday.com/group program. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 110. Welcome to the 110th episode of the Fertility Friday podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Lisa from fertilityfriday.com, and this is your source for information about the fertility awareness method and all things fertility. Before I jump into today's episode, I just wanted to take a moment and let you know about my group program. So I do still have spaces available for the January 2017 Fertility Friday group programs. And I am tailoring the group specifically. So one group is going to be tailored specifically for women who are trying to conceive, and another is going to be tailored specifically to women who are trying to avoid pregnancy. And so I'm really excited about the January groups. I do have a couple spaces open still, but they are starting to fill up. So if you're thinking about jumping in and being part of the group, don't wait too long. Once the groups fill up, then registration will be closed until the next time I offer, which I'm not sure when that'll be. Sometime possibly later on in the year, but it won't be for several months. And I just wanted to share with you what one of my clients said about our work together.
I would want anyone considering joining the program to know that it's not just a group to learn about charting. And that's maybe how it's initially framed, but it's so much more than that. It's really body literacy, body awareness, and reflection on who you are as a person and what your goals are. Lisa's knowledge of women's health is incredible. I mean, beyond any OB or GYN I've ever seen. I've learned more from a program that I checked in with her once a week than I have in going to the doctor for 37 years. So I just can't say enough about the level of commitment she provides to her group participants, but also the level of knowledge. It's incredible.
So make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program for more information. So before I jump into today's interview, I just wanted to take a quick moment. So this is now the third installment of my fertility awareness reality series. So for those of you who have listened to my previous episodes, you'll know that before I jump into the interview, I just want to be really clear that these special episodes that I'm doing, they are not intended to be medical advice. They are not intended to be anything like that. They're for informational purposes only. And I am not a doctor. I am not a naturopath. I'm not an acupuncturist. I am a fertility awareness educator and a Justice Holistic Reproductive Practitioner intern. And so I just want to be very clear that these are for informational purposes. And the women who have agreed to participate, they were so excited to be part of the series because they really wanted to share their own experiences with you, with the listeners. They really wanted to contribute just to kind of this educational process to showcase their own experiences in the hopes that it would help other women who may have experienced the same thing. So without further ado, let's jump into my interview with Aisha. I'm so excited to welcome Aisha back to the show. If you go back to episode number 35, you can listen to a full interview. Aisha founded the Fertility Awareness Facebook group. Back then it was at 1,500 members, but now it's, well over 3,000 members. But Aisha was really keen to learn the Justice method of charting. So Aisha has been charting her cycles for how many years now?
4 years.
4 years. But she was keen to learn the Justice method, which is a little bit different to the method that she was using. And so she basically volunteered to come on this show. And what we're going to be doing today is basically what I do with clients. And so this is our first session together, kind of more of an introduction and also an intake. So one of the things a lot of people ask what I do as a fertility awareness educator. So of course, this series is to share with everybody what I do. So Aisha, welcome to the show.
Hey, welcome.
Well, thanks for being here. So, I mean, just to give the audience a sense of you and where you're at with charting, maybe you could just share how you discovered FAM, the fertility awareness method, and how many years that you've actually been charting your cycles.
Yeah, my name is Aisha Makuza. I'm 26 years old. I've been chatting for 4 years now. I self-taught with taking charge of your fertility. I discovered fertility awareness after we had issues with the condoms. So we wanted something natural, but I didn't want to do hormones. I have issues with hormones. I've never been on hormonal birth control, but I didn't fancy it at all. But anyway, I was looking for natural birth control in the online, and that's how I discovered fertility awareness. And I got the book for taking charge of your fertility, and I read it, and I had problems with cervical mucus. I kind of quit on that. So the first year and a half I did fertility awareness, I was doing basal body temperatures only because of the difficulties with the cervical mucus. So then after the year and a half, I saw chats on Kindora app. It opened up a community for people who use the app, and I signed up. And almost everybody who was sharing their chats, they were checking for cervical mucus. So I figured if everybody can do it, so can I. So I was like, okay, I'm going to battle it again. And I read their knowledge base. And finally, I started doing symptothermal method of birth control. And so altogether, 4 years, 1 year and a half of basal body temperature only, and the other symptothermal method. So right now, I'm going to learn how to accurately even gain more, confidence with checking cervical mucus.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so all of my clients get access to my online Introduction to Fertility Awareness Charting, which is currently 7 videos and at least about 3 hours of instruction. And so I know you went through some of that.
Yes.
So for you, I'm sure quite a bit of it was review, since you know the method. But was there anything that stood out for you that perhaps you didn't know, or something that intrigued you?
Yes. The cervical mucus description for the days, and how when you wipe and it's damp, but you have a dry sensation, that is actually dry. That I didn't know. I think I've been, marking a lot of creamy days that should be dry.
Okay.
But I just started only 4 days after, doing the sessions that you showed me, that you gave me access to. So after seeing all that, I was, menstruating. So I just waited until I'm done so I can start. And I've been doing the techniques, the folded paper towel technique for 4 days now. And that's the number one thing I've discovered so far. Dry days. Oh, I thought I had a lot of mucus days, and I was worried about that. In fact, that's the reason why I wanted to, learn justice.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's something that it's actually really common. So you're definitely not the only client of mine to say that. And so when I'm working with clients, it's especially clients who have already been charting, and they typically learn through some sort of book. So obviously most clients maybe through Taking Charge of Your Fertility, or even some Katie Singer's Garden of Fertility. But one of the trends that I see is a lot of women over-reading mucus. So having mucus observations basically every day in their pre-ovulatory phase, and often because of internal checking.
Yes. So I'm already finding a lot of misinterpretations over that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to quickly go over your understanding. So one of the things that I like to do is just to kind of, in the first session especially, to kind of go through some of the basics so that I know exactly where you are. So I have it in the back of my mind, Aisha has been charting forever, but I don't want to assume that and miss something. So why don't you share with me your understanding just of mucus? So just the basics to make sure that we've got the basics covered, but your understanding of mucus and why mucus days are fertile versus, say, non-mucus days.
Because, sperm can't survive in the vagina without the cervical mucus. Cervical mucus make it alkaline and helps sperm travel to the egg and all that. So once you observe cervical mucus, that I know you're fertile. So I know that part, but vagina, cell sludge or whatever, that thing. Yeah, that kind of, for a long time, I've been trying to tackle it. Yeah, I've been having issues with that. Sometimes I think I get it. Sometimes I'm not sure. So it's a question mark.
Well, and that's something. So you sent me your last 6 charts, and then so that's something that is quite clear on your charts that you do not use the method in your pre-ovulatory phase, which I think is fairly common. Not everybody does, especially if you never have a dry day. So I want to get into then the observations so we can really get clear on what a dry day is, because I feel like it's quite liberating.
Yes, it is.
So we went through just the basics of why cervical mucus days are fertile. And so cervical mucus then can keep the sperm alive for anywhere from 3 to 5 days. Then when you do see cervical mucus, when you have cervical mucus observations, what is that telling you about your hormones?
Estrogen is picking up.
Yes. Yes.
High levels of estrogen, preparing for ovulation. Yeah.
Yes. So as your body reaches closer.
Oh, it's slow.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully it seems like it's sort of hanging on. But as your body's gearing towards ovulation, then your estrogen levels are rising, and estrogen is responsible for cervical mucus production, as you know, and then it's what triggers ovulation. So when the estrogen levels rise to a certain point, it triggers the luteinizing hormone, the LH surge. And then after ovulation, or maybe you already kind of explained a little bit of why the dry days are infertile, but maybe you could just share what happens after ovulation. Why are you not fertile then in your post-ovulatory phase?
After ovulation, the corpus luteum, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it starts, what's left behind after the egg pops out. The corpus luteum, it starts producing progesterone. And those progesterone, they make the temperatures high. But the egg, before that happens anyway, the egg lives for about 24 to 28 days. Well, it lives for 24, but if there's another one, and it can turn into 48. And you cannot, with charting, you cannot know if, you have 1 egg or 2 or more. But anyway, it all happens within that range, 48 hours.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in there. It's interesting, actually, because that exact question came up in my own group among educators. Someone looking for clarification, because I guess in taking charge of your fertility, there's a mention of 48 hours, 24 to 48. So do you have your Justice book with you? Do you have your guide?
I have it on the phone, so I would have to.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, but I think it says in taking charge of your fertility, egg lives for 12 to 24 hours. But then if there's another one, the whole thing 48 hours.
Well, right? This is a really good, I guess, opportunity. So I'm just going to look in the book here, but yeah, I didn't realize you didn't have the actual physical book. But basically, ovulation only happens on 1 day in the cycle. And so the really important part of it is that's why I like to go over the basics, so that we have that understanding of what's happening hormonally. So as estrogen levels rise in the pre-ov phase, they get to a certain point. So it's like a thermostat in your house. And then it gets to a certain point. And then your brain's like, okay. And then that's what triggers the pituitary to release luteinizing hormone. And that's what triggers ovulation. So luteinizing hormone is what causes the ovary to ovulate. So to go back to, the very basics, you have in the pre-ovulatory phase, after your period, so after menstruation, your brain starts talking to your ovaries. So your pituitary releases follicle stimulating hormone, and then that's what stimulates the ovaries, the follicles in the ovaries, to start developing. As the follicles develop, the follicles themselves start to produce estrogen. So the estrogen is produced by your ovaries, which is really neat. And then as your cycle progresses, eventually one follicle is selected by Mother Nature as the dominant, and it produces the most. It stretches to, say, 20 times the size that it was. And as it gets bigger, it actually pushes against the side of the ovary. So this is happening, it's getting bigger, it's producing a ton of estrogen. As the estrogen levels rise, then we have that thermostat type response. Your brain says, hey, and that's what triggers ovulation. So then you can picture the follicle kind of pushing against the ovary, and then eventually it bursts. But it does that in response to luteinizing hormone. So if there's more than one ovulation, it's going to happen within that same 12 to 24 hour period, because there's only say that one LH surge, and that is in response to the estrogen levels being high. So this is a hormonal event, and it's happening at the same time. I'm really glad that you brought that up. I think that it's a misunderstanding. And like I said, I think it's even mentioned 48 hours in the book itself. But
so it's never 48, it's maximum 28.
It's 12 to 24 hours, because it happens on one day. And if there's more than one egg, it's happening at the same time. So a woman doesn't have multiple ovulations. She's not going to ovulate on Tuesday and then Thursday. I think this is a good time to talk about peak day. So do you know what peak day is, first of all?
Yes. Peak day is the last day of your most fertile cervical mucus, peak type cervical mucus.
Yes.
Mine is egg white. I never get watery, so I get egg white cervical mucus, and my peak day is usually the last day of egg white cervical mucus.
Yes, exactly. So peak day is the last day that you observe mucus with any peak type qualities. So with the Justice charting system, instead of talking about egg white, creamy, sticky, we talk about peak and non-peak. And so peak day is the last day that you observe any mucus that has peak qualities. So those qualities are clear, stretchy, or lubricative. Not the day that you have the most, but just the last day that you have any.
The last day.
The reason I wanted to talk about peak day is because, studies have been done where they actually go in and do the ultrasound, because ultimately taking your temperature tells you quite clearly, that you ovulated, say, the day before, give or take.
Yes.
But the most accurate measure of whether a woman ovulated or not would be to give her an ultrasound every day to see when it actually happened, right? And so there's studies that have been done where they actually went in and did an ultrasound, every day to determine women are ovulating. And so 90% of the time, a woman will ovulate either on her peak day or, up to peak day +2. And then there's a very small percentage of women who may ovulate peak day +3. And so that's why the rules are the way they are. And maybe that's what confuses people to think that you could ovulate more than one day. But either way, ovulation would still happen within a 12 to 24 hour period. Yes. Whether it happens on peak day +1, +2, or 3, if a woman is regularly ovulating on peak day +3, that would be actually telling us something about how effectively her brain is communicating with her ovaries. So that could indicate something that's off, because it's not supposed to be that's not ideal, because that would be telling us that there's something going on, say, with her HPA axis. So that's just some background info.
Okay.
And hopefully so the rules then take all of this into consideration. So that's why when you say peak day +3, that takes into consideration that even that tiny percent of women that might ovulate on peak day +3, that's kind of that.
Rules are designed to be conservative, right?
Yes.
So they count in all the variations, even those who ovulate on peak day +3.
Exactly. Yes.
Got it.
So yeah, I wanted to go over that. So just to talk about the 12 to 24-hour thing. So I think that's super important. And then you alluded to exactly why then a woman is not fertile in her post-ovulatory phase. So after ovulation, the corpus luteum starts to produce progesterone. So if you think back to the ovary that we were talking about and the follicle growing, producing lots of estrogen and then bursting, literally quite.
Yes.
Then the same follicle. So that it's
Speaking of, let me stop you. So ovulation, is it when the egg busts out of the follicles?
Yes.
Is it? Okay.
Yes. So the egg literally bursts the follicle and the ovary itself. So if you were to watch it, you would see this kind of egg bursting. And it's really neat because when a woman ovulates, the fallopian tubes are not attached to her ovary. So then she ovulates and the fallopian tubes kind of draw the egg into them with Mother Nature's magic, which is really neat. And then the same ovary, so then after the egg bursts out of it, it kind of forms like a little scar. If you were to look inside, it would look kind of yellow. So corpus luteum stands for yellow body, or it means yellow body in like Latin or something. And so if you were to look on the ovary, you would kind of see this yellowish looking scar. So the corpus luteum is a temporary endocrine gland that produces progesterone. And as soon as it starts pumping out progesterone shuts down cervical mucus production. It changes the actual cervix. So it changes the cervix from softer to harder to closed. Like it closes up the shop. And then it also has obviously an impact on your body's metabolism. So your temperature is a measure of your resting metabolism.
Okay, it's like, we're done until menstruation, okay?
Yes. Yeah, I'm really glad we talked about that because it makes such a difference in terms of being able to understand the method and to have confidence in it, right? To know all the little nitty gritty. Before I move on, was there anything that you wanted to ask me about the method or about the like biology behind it or any of that stuff?
Yeah, for, what you were talking about, ovulation happening, say, on peak 3 days after peak.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so if you have a chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a peak day today, and then 3 days after, you have a temperature shift, like my cycle, like my last cycle. Would that mean that ovulation happened where, like on peak +3 kind of thing, or maybe peak +2?
Well, what you would typically see in terms of being able to identify when ovulation happened, you'd be using your temperature to do that. And so if you see your sustained thermal shift, so you have your peak day, and then your sustained thermal shift happens, I guess, 2 or 3, maybe even 4 days after that. That's going to clue you into when your ovulation is happening. I have all your charts up here, but
the previous one. Yeah, because usually my temperature shift the day after peak, sometimes on peak day, but every now and then I have these cycles where it happens, 2-3 days after peak. So I'm always wondering, during those cycles, does that mean I definitely didn't ovulate on peak day, but rather, those few days after peak?
Well, typically, I would have to ask you some questions. So the chart that I'm looking at is from August to September, and I see that your peak day was on day 9. So the first thing I want to ask you is, how do you check your temperatures? In terms of the direction with Justice, these days we all use, pretty much, most of us use digital thermometers, right? You put it in your mouth and it beeps right away.
I've got Winky.
Oh, Wink. Okay. Well, regardless of what kind of thermometer you use, the recommendation is to leave it in for at least 7 to 10 minutes before you push the button.
Well, I just, go with the beep on my thermometer, and Lisa, that's been working good. But, if I have to do 7 minutes, so be it. But I don't know if Winky can let me do 7 minutes, though.
Well, what you would do is you would literally, put it in your mouth and, lay there and then
Even when
wait
it's okay.
wait 5 to 7 minutes and then push it and then turn it on. So that's the first thing. And I know, especially because I'm doing my group program. And so we've talked about this in the group. And I know some of the girls were like, this is annoying. You mean to tell me I don't want to wait in my bed and da. But then the interesting thing is when you actually do it consistently, you can notice a difference. So yeah, I would recommend it because then you're getting the most accurate temperatures, and it can help to reduce some of the confusion, or at least in my case, when I'm reading your charts, at least I can know that we've taken care of that. So at least we know that your readings are accurate. But it does make a difference. So play with it, try it.
Yeah, I'm trying Winky out, so it could be that because I didn't have, my other business thermometer. It was a digital one. I never had any problems with it, so that's why I'm not really worried about the temperature shifting. It's just one of those cycles. Yeah. And if you see in my chart, even if you go by peak day, it's a lot of days. I ended up having 17 days.
Yes.
My highest has been 16. I've never had a 17-day LP. So, luteal phase, but that was too long. As you can see on there, there's a pregnancy test.
Yeah.
So that was scary business. Anywhere I could look at it from peak, from temperature shift.
Well, and as I look on the chart, so you recorded your thermal shift to be on day 12, on day 13, and it could have even been on day 12. So when we look at a thermal shift, it's a temperature that's higher than the previous 6. That's the thermal shift. So if we look at the previous 6, it could have been on day 12. So I would actually move your baseline down, and I would put that as 1.
And if you do that, it's 18.
It's 18. Yeah. So the thing is that if you do have 18 high and you're not pregnant, if this is something that you see again, you'd want to look into it a little bit more because it can be indicative of a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Everyone has a one-off, something that's wrong, but, something that can happen, but you want to make sure that you're checking that out.
Yeah, but also the reason why, I trusted that shift is the cervical mucus changes, the way they change from peak day to non-peak after ovulation. It was typical like every cycle.
Yeah.
So I was just waiting for my temperature shift, which happened 3 days after.
Well, that would be something where you just kind of watch for the patterns. Because then if you look at some of the previous charts, it looks like its peak day is matching up quite well with your temperature shifts. But as we kind of touched on, like if it's something that you're seeing consistently where you're having peak day and then your temperature isn't shifting till 3 or 4 days after that's happening consistently, that could be telling you something in terms of what's going on in terms of your HPA axis, like how well your pituitary is talking, like how well that whole feedback system is working, just so that you know what's going on there. So let's talk about the observational routine. I was so excited to see that you've been trying it out. So
Yes.
Yeah, so I can relate. I mean, when I started charting, I used Taking Charge of Your Fertility. I didn't use any of my pre-ovulatory days ever for unprotected sex. I was exactly like you are me. I never felt comfortable. I never really had a dry day that I knew of because I was checking internally. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about sharing kind of this method, because the observational routine is actually it's like a standardized method.
Yes, and it has to be.
Yeah.
Because if I remember, like I told you, I quit. When I was beginning up, I just quit cervical mucus and I just went with temperatures. I cannot do that now anymore, by the way.
Yeah.
Once you start doing cervical mucus, you never go back to temperatures only. Nope.
So I want to go through just the basics. So you've already started doing it, but in terms of the observational routine, so basically what I always say to my clients is like you're checking whenever your pants are down.
Yes.
So, before and after you go to the bathroom, when you wake up in the morning, before you go to bed, even if you wake up in the middle of the night, I know some of my clients are like, what do you mean? it's dark. I don't want to wake myself up. So I would say to wipe and pay attention to the sensation, even if it's the middle of the night. I wouldn't say to like turn on the lights and wake yourself up because that's not good for your hormones. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what that's been like? I always like props because I'm a nerd. So here's the tissue.
Yeah.
Obviously flat. And then wiping from front to back. And I'll just flip to the book. So in the book, there's a picture of the vulva. I also like to kind of do a basic anatomy lesson because I feel like when were you ever given a proper description of your vulva? Like, did that ever happen?
Like never.
Like never, exactly. So in this picture then, I'll hold it up because I know you have it on I don't know if you can even see it, but so in the picture, you'll see the clitoral hood there.
Yes.
This little hole there, that is your urethra. And so I like to point it out, and then your vaginal opening here. Yes. Because I don't think I'm the only one that didn't know where my pee came out of until I was fully an adult. Like, I know that I am not the only one because many women have never even looked at their own vulva. So I don't know if you've ever done that with like a hand mirror. TMI. TMI. What day is it? TMI Fridays.
No, that's all right. I actually did before Fertility Awareness. I was watching an Oprah show and she told the audience, everybody, to grab a mirror. So I was like, why not? So I grabbed a mirror and I was like, okay. Well, I mean, I've seen pictures and I see videos and all that, but good to every once in a while to look at mine. So no problem at all. Yeah, but I knew where the pee came from.
Yes. So that's good. But the reason I pointed out, it might seem silly, but the reason I point that out then is that because I know a lot of women will ask, okay, so you wipe before you pee. Okay, fine. So you wipe from front to back and you wipe across your perineum. So you pay careful attention to how it feels. That's how you determine the sensation. And you want to figure out the sensation before you look at the tissue.
Lisa, I did not know. I always thought the way you observe sensation, you have to, be like in tune with your vagina. You like sit over there and start feeling seriously. I did it for one cycle and I don't know how I did it, but I was able to feel some wetness on my peak days anyway. But the next cycle, I couldn't feel anything. I didn't know it's sensation. You feel it when you wipe. Yeah. I didn't know that. I thought you just, because, they say feel. So I thought, okay, you just sit over there, take a moment, speak to your vagina. All right, it's that's dry. Awesome. Okay. That's awesome. Seriously, I'm not even kidding. There's some things seem obvious to some people and some not. Sensation was never obvious. So until, once I saw the videos that you showed me and then I read through the book, I was like, oh my God, this is sensation? No wonder I never talk about sensation to anybody because I know that's something I just said last day of sensation, but let me not get into that, okay?
Yes.
I didn't know you have to. Yes. So that was something that I learned, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And I've been so far when I wipe, I've been feeling a dry, but I'm not. I'm really just like 4 days from menstruation right now.
Yeah.
So I've been just feeling dry, and some of them dry feeling, but a dampness. And I've not been tempted at all to do internal checks. By the way. I'm going by the books.
Wow, I'm impressed. So the most important thing about the sensation piece of it is that make sure to try to get into the habit of deciding on the sensation before you look.
Check the look, yeah.
So the perineum is really sensitive. Like if you were to tickle your wrist, you don't really think of your wrist as sensitive until you do that and you're like, ooh. So when you're wiping, and then you have 3 options. It's either going to feel dry, smooth, or lubricative. And I think one of the interesting things is when women start to use the method and they start wiping, they are kind of alarmed by how many dry days sometimes.
They have.
Because before, every day was not dry. So what's really helpful is that when you do it this way, it really clarifies what a dry day is. Like if you are having mucus on a day, it will come out. Just I mean, that's part of the reason that you want to get in the habit of checking like before and after and, throughout the day is so that part of it is so that you can observe it. Like obviously you have to be checking to observe it. Part of it is for you to know how much you're seeing it. So this way it quantifies it so that, because you write down your most fertile sign at the end of the day, and then you write down how many times you saw it. And so that really
I'm learning that from the book. So kind of getting myself to, chart justice.
Yes. So when you're checking then, so the first thing you check for is sensation. So we talked about that. And then the second thing is observation. So you look, what color is it? How much does it stretch? Like if you can finger test it, like if there's something that you can actually pick up, then that is mucus. Like basically as far as the
mucus.
Yeah. So if it's something you can pick up. So, I mean, it takes a little bit of time because it's literally like a new language. And until you kind of go through a full cycle, which you'll see for yourself, when you go through a full cycle and then you actually feel what dry feels like versus smooth and lubricative. Until you've experienced them, you might think that smooth and lubricative could be, I don't know, confuse them. But lubricative is super obvious. It's a super obvious sensation, just like dry is a super obvious sensation.
Yes, dry is super obvious.
Yeah, and so smooth is also, so then when you have experienced them all, then smooth is also obvious and distinct. Smooth is not lubricative.
Yes, this is like the first time I'm doing external checks, so everything is like totally new for me.
Yes.
So first time I'm doing this, so I'm kind of like a newbie. Oh, I am a newbie, never mind.
So, I mean, the first cycle, what I always say, so be gentle with yourself. Don't expect perfection. Let yourself, one of the things I often say to my clients is that when you start feeling confused, that usually means that you're kind of onto something. When you start, because that means you're learning and you're trying to figure it out. And so the feeling of confusion is part of the process because this is a language that you're learning and you're figuring out how to categorize your mucus this way. And I think at first, like any new skill, it can be a little overwhelming, but really once you've done it for a couple cycles, then it's like, it really just becomes second nature. But I guess the benefit of it for me when I was learning, because I can totally relate, right? Because I didn't know what a dry, like, so the benefit of it is it really clarifies. It's like, okay, this is a dry day. I understand what that is. I actually have pre-ovulatory dry days. That's a thing. And then once we kind of get a handle on like just identifying it, there's so much more to learn and to get to the point where you can feel comfortable and confident if you want to. No, you don't have to, but if you want to, use the method in your pre-ovulatory phase. Like if you want to have unprotected sex and know confidently the rules. So the first step is just doing it. It takes a little bit of time. It usually takes, a few cycles really to get through and to kind of practice and to get, have you ever done the semen elimination technique?
Yeah, I always do that because I check cervical mucus throughout the cycle.
Yeah.
Even after ovulation is confirmed. So yeah.
That's good. Yes. And so just, why don't you share with me your understanding of it just so that your understanding of the semen elimination technique?
Yeah, it's pretty much the semen eliminating techniques. You use the technique to kind of push the semen out of the vagina so you don't confuse that with cervical mucus checks later on. So, and it's best to do as soon as possible.
Yeah. So you don't have to jump out of bed like as soon as you're finished. Like it's not like, okay, you don't have to. I mean, I think it's good to know that you don't have to. Typically within, say, 20 to 30 minutes, because if you leave it longer than that, the semen starts to kind of commingle with your vaginal fluid. And then you've probably experienced where you kind of feel like wet and icky the whole day, the following day. Yeah. So, but you don't have to jump out of bed right away, but you want to do it within, say, 15 to 20 minutes.
Yes.
Yes. And then you sit on the toilet, push, wipe, push, wipe, push, wipe, push, wipe. Until
it's all done. Yeah, I do that. So that's something I do already.
Yeah, so that's perfect that you do it already. And it's really helpful as you know, because then you're not confusing semen with mucus when you're doing your observations. that makes a huge difference. So, I mean, and it helps. And also, I mean, you can learn to distinguish between semen and mucus. All right. So we've talked about the observational notations. So that's something that you'll have to kind of sit with a little bit. And there's a lot of notations there. So a couple things that I just want to point out. There's a lot of notations there. You won't necessarily ever have all of them. There's some observations I've never had. They're all there for different reasons. So you'll notice all the different options like P for pasty, G for gummy gluey, B for brown. These are all things that not only tell us about fertility and infertility, but as you've probably gathered, it also tells us something about your cervical health, endocrine health, even the example of if you have mucus kind of in your post-ovulatory phase, if you're checking for that, if you're having mucus outside of what you're supposed to be having and you're working with someone like me, then that's something that we'll point out and look into. So don't worry too much about, having every observation or anything like that. There's some that you will probably never have, but they're all there because it's kind of like, these are pretty much all the stuff that could come out of your vagina.
They cover everybody.
Yeah. And so if something's coming out of there, you should be able to fit it in here somewhere. And that gives us a lot of information, even beyond just whether you're fertile or not.
Okay. Yeah, but now I can track everything right, and then I'll send you my charts.
Yeah, so just go in there and then add me as your HRHP, and then we'll talk. So I want to make sure to kind of set you up. This is all new. I know you went through the videos.
It is.
You're an excellent student. Yay.
Thank you.
One of the kind of like when you learn to chart and you look at the thing, like it's your first month of doing it and you look at the observational notations, I think it's good to know that it is possible to get a little bit obsessive about it. That's not the point, you know what I mean, right? The point is for it to rule your life. In the beginning, it kind of does. But if you, in the beginning of any new thing, it kind of does. But the point of it is the end goal. I mean, the learning process is what it is, but the end goal is for you to be really confident, like, every day, is today a fertile day or not? That's the purpose of all of this.
And the funny thing, Lisa, I have been, wiping before and after I used the restroom, and it hasn't been even a problem at all. And I've been one who checks cervical mucus once when I wake up and once before bed. And I thought it was going to be a nightmare, but it is not. And actually, I've been learning a lot. But then again, if I'm interested into something and I really want to learn it and I'm dedicated, it's usually easy. Yeah. It's the other stuff that I'm, forced to learn or something that I had to learn. But anything I'm dedicated about and passionate about, it's kind of turns out easy for me anyway.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I always say is, it seems like a lot, but hey, it's not like this is the first time you ever wiped yourself. Like every day we are all wiping anyway. We're
so
just now we're just doing it consciously.
Attention.
Yes, it's like conscious wiping.
Yeah.
You'll notice, you'll have the opportunity to compare. And so with internal checks, I always say there's always something there. When you put your finger in your vagina, it is not going to come out dry. So it must be super confusing to every woman that's asking about a dry day when literally you never have one.
I also check cervical position. So I had to quit that for this cycle so I don't want to cheat because I've been doing internal checks for so long that I figured if I do cervical position checks, I might cheat. So I've kind of taken a backseat on that. And then at least after the first cycle, and see how it goes, then I'll see if I can do the cervical position without cheating.
Yes. Well, there's a couple things you can do, because part of what I do too is meet you where you're at. So in terms of checking cervical position, so cervical position is an optional sign. It is not mandatory. Some women will check it every day. Some women will never check it. But what I always suggest for all my clients is to check it for 1 full month so that you at least get the full gamut of what your cervix is doing, where it's going, where it's hanging out, how it feels. But so you would check once a day whenever. So try maybe the same time every day. So maybe when you take a shower because you're naked and clean, that could work.
Yeah.
Well, yes. So I think we're off to a great start. So in our next session together, then we're going to talk about the rules. Even though you've been charting for all these years, we could get you to the point that you feel really confident and comfortable knowing which days in your pre-ovulatory window are fertile and not. But it's not something that, as you can imagine, because this is, I mean, I could talk all day, but ultimately you're the one that has to go back to your bathroom and like wipe and stuff.
True,
so I can talk all the time and tell you all kinds of stuff, but this is a process that involves you participating, right? And so I would say that it would still take 2 to 3 cycles for you to feel super confident about the pre-ovulatory phase, just to get the rules down and feel really comfortable. So I wouldn't recommend to have one session and go and like, okay, let's go unprotected in the pre-ov.
You don't have to worry about me. I follow the rules. So 3 cycles, no problem. I can do that. And I always said there's always next cycle. Yeah.
All right.
But those pre-ovulatory rules, 3 cycles, I can do it. No problem at all. Yeah. Until I feel confident.
Well, yeah. And the thing too is there's no pressure to do anything, right? Like this is knowledge and information. And just like it probably took you a little bit of time to feel comfortable having unprotected sex in the post-ov, because even when I first learned, it took me a little bit of time to feel comfortable before going unprotected in the post-ovulatory phase. It did take me a little bit of time, not a ton, but a little bit.
I went by the book which said 3 cycles. Yeah. After 3 cycles, I was like, yes, I'm good. And then I went unprotected and I freaked out.
Yes, I remember that story. Yes. But there's so many reasons why you have to do that. And, you know, in your case, refresh my memory, you've never been on hormonal contraceptives.
No, but I've taken Plan B. But other than that, I've never been on hormonal birth control a long time. No.
Well, you know, I think that's a really, especially because this is, obviously we're doing this for the podcast. I think that it's good for the women listening to recognize that when you're using the fertility awareness method, if you are having sex of some kind during your fertile window, then it is important to have that conversation with yourself of what you would do if the condom broke or if the withdrawal didn't work out. And we can have a conversation about withdrawal on days of peak fertility, because we talked about that in our
interview.
Did. Yeah. So, you know, some studies have shown that when used perfectly, withdrawal is up to 94% effective. But there are some men that seem to potentially have sperm in their pre-seminal fluid. So it depends on the couple. It depends on a lot of different things. But I think that that's a really good point, because you kind of have to have that conversation with yourself and a conversation with your partner, and potentially even have Plan B on hand. You know what I mean?
Lisa, as a last. Me, are you?
No, I'm not.
Mind reading right
now. Well, but I would talk about Plan B though with fertility awareness. I think as well that you have so much more clarity as to whether or not you need it. Because if you are not, like, say for example that you're using a condom in your post-ovulatory phase after you've confirmed ovulation and it breaks, perhaps
you don't need to.
Exactly. So you have the clarity to know whether or not you actually need it at that time. And so I think if every woman knew what her cycles were doing, it would potentially significantly lessen how much Plan B women actually have to take, right?
Yes. But anyway, when it happened to me, Lisa, peak day, I was at the store in about 30 minutes. Anyway, learn to listen. I have it on my bedside, but I'm making sure I don't take it though, as in I follow the rules and I make sure, you know, my husband and I have brilliant communication after that. I tell him, you know, so he knows. I don't assume anything, and that was it. I assumed and he assumed. So no assumption anymore. It's clarity right away. Yes or no.
Yes.
Withdraw now.
I haven't gone back and listened to it for a while, but yeah, we talked about a lot of good stuff and how it improved the communication between the two of you and just
Yes.
I love that we're talking about this too, because the communication piece, so nice. And after using fertility awareness and being partnered, I can't imagine what the communication would be like, right? Because it forces you to talk about these things, and it doesn't have to be like a detailed, long conversation. Usually just have a little check-in or whatever,
Like it would ask me, are you having egg white cervicamicus? Well, I know now. I'm gonna correct him. Pig type cervicamicus.
Yes, more information he probably didn't want to know.
Yeah, but he would ask, he asks every now and then.
All right. Well, Aisha, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast and have a very public, private session.
Well, it's been a fun one, that's for sure. It is. And Lisa, also thank you so much for the opportunity, really.
Well,
you've taught me so much, made correction some stuff I didn't know, and thank you, really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I think it's going to be fascinating to the listeners to be like, oh my goodness, she's using the method for 4 years and there's still more to learn.
Yes, always more to learn. Lisa, I can't wait for the next session, because now I'll have a whole chart to see exactly how I've been identifying those dry days.
Wow. I think that what my experience was with Justice is it kind of deepened my knowledge of it. It really helps to build the confidence. That's what I found for myself. So I hope that that's what you get out of it too.
Yeah. Yes, I'm already liking this, loving it. Yeah, and I've just started 4 days. So far so good.
All right. Well, thank you again, Aisha. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend. You'll find the show notes page for today's episode at fertilityfriday.com/110. I hope that you enjoyed my interview with Aisha today. It was such a treat to have the opportunity to chat with her and to have a session where we really were able to delve into the fertility awareness method. Aisha had reached out to me a little while ago because she wanted to learn about the Justice method and just how the mucus charting aspects were maybe a bit different to what she was doing before. So it was really great to have the opportunity to have that session with her. And you'll notice that if you've listened to some of the other on-air sessions that I've done with clients, every session is different. There's always different things that come up depending on what each woman is wanting to discuss, what is kind of like the most pressing issue. And you'll notice that there's definitely differences for women who are trying to conceive. Often there are different topics that are top of mind and different things that we delve into and address. And when a woman is trying to avoid pregnancy when she's using the fertility awareness method, there's definitely different topics that are top of mind, different considerations, and it's the same information, but we're looking at it in a very different way. And it's very interesting when, as an educator, to be able to step back and see how the application of the knowledge is so different when a woman is wanting to try to conceive versus when she's trying to avoid pregnancy. And I think one of the interesting things about it is that there are times when I'm working with clients who are trying to conceive, who are having unprotected sex on their fertile days and obviously not conceiving for whatever reason, versus when a woman is trying to avoid pregnancy and the thought of even having unprotected sex on a fertile day is just completely out of the question. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that because I think in my series, this is the only episode where my client is specifically trying to avoid pregnancy and using the method strictly as birth control. And so it's really important to kind of know and really interesting to see the differences. And it's such a good reminder that the fertility awareness method, the knowledge itself is just that. And it's really up to you to decide how you're going to use it. And, that's one of the reasons that it's such empowering information, because then the control is really within your hands. If you've been enjoying the podcast, please look for it on iTunes and leave a 5-star review so that more people can find it. And make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com and join my email list. If you have an idea for a podcast episode or a guest suggestion, send me an email at info@fertilityfriday.com. I have a ton of great ideas for episodes coming up in the new year, which I'm really excited to share with you. And also, I just want to remind you that I do still have spaces available in my Fertility Friday group programs that are starting in January of 2017. So I'm doing 2 separate groups, one group specifically for women who are trying to conceive and another group specifically for women who are trying to avoid pregnancies. The spaces are limited and they are filling up fast, but I still do have a couple spots left. So if you're thinking about joining and being part of the groups, make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program and make sure to apply so we can reserve your spot in the group. And so I just want to thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I appreciate all of you for taking the time to tune into the podcast. So whatever it is that you're doing, I know some of you take me to work on the commute. Some of you take me for a walk, or if you're going for a run or something like that. Others doing housework, laundry, dishes. I listen to a lot of podcasts that way, and walking the dog as well. So however you're listening today, some of you might even be at work. And so however you are listening today, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen and supporting the show. And as always, until next time, be well and happy charting.